Today, I'm going to explain the thriller movie Infidelity in Suburbia, which was released in 2017. The film opens with a steamy scene where a couple passionately makes out. Just as the man throws the woman onto the bed, they are suddenly interrupted by her young son. The boy grins as he holds up a dead mouse, causing his mother to scream. Her husband, who is actually the child's stepfather, gets up to handle the situation. Next, the scene shifts to a boatyard, where a family of 3 is preparing their boat. The woman, Laura, is discussing her desire to renovate the kitchen, but her husband firmly rejects the idea. While chatting with her son, Jamie, she reminds him to be careful with the knife. As they talk, Laura's husband gets a phone call and walks away. Meanwhile, a mysterious man watches Laura closely. As she pushes her cart, she suddenly slips, and a box almost topples over. Just in time, the man rushes to catch it, saving her from the mishap. After leaving, Laura's husband, Greg, returns and hands her a newspaper with a headline reporting an arson on Denton Island. As they discuss the news, Jamie suddenly slips from the edge of the deck and falls into the water. The man who previously helped Laura rushes to his aid and rescues Jamie. He introduces himself as Elliot, and the parents express their gratitude for his swift and generous actions. Later, Elliot is invited to a family dinner where Laura steps aside with her best friend, Myra. They have a conversation about Elliot, and Laura begins to find herself drawn to his impressive physique. Once dinner begins, Elliot is invited inside, and as he enters, he notices a painting Laura created, which he admires greatly. Laura then shares with him that she once sold her artwork, but Greg turned her art studio into a work shed. Meanwhile, Greg remains occupied with phone calls from his assistant, Hannah, during which he makes flirty remarks. Despite the tension, the family sits down to eat, and during dinner, Elliot offers them a deal to complete the renovation at a discounted family rate. Overjoyed by the offer, they happily accept his proposal, sensing that Elliot's presence might bring more than just renovations into their lives. The following day, Laura and Myra head out on a job together, and during the ride, they chat about how incredibly attractive Elliot is. Myra can't help but admire Laura's good fortune. When Laura arrives home, she catches a glimpse of Elliot standing shirtless in the yard. Intrigued, she heads down to meet him, and as he goes over the renovation details, Laura can't take her eyes off his sculpted physique. Once Elliot finishes explaining, Laura quickly heads upstairs to take a shower. As she prepares herself, she's caught off guard when she sees Elliot pass silently in front of the bathroom door. Later that afternoon, while at the supermarket selecting shades for the kitchen, Laura is surprised when Elliot appears behind her. He compliments her design choice and then offers her a small surprise. He asks her to close her eyes, and then hands her a sip of juice and a bite of a delicious cannoli. Elliot tells her the treat is from Laodicea, a bakery he used to visit with his mom whenever they were in town. After their brief moment, they leave the store together. Back at Laura's house, Myra arrives and finds Elliot working again, this time once more shirtless. She is mesmerized by his perfect body and can't help but ask him personal questions about his life and relationships. Elliot reveals that he doesn't have a girlfriend but does have his eye on someone special. With that, he leaves, leaving Myra feeling both impressed and a little intimidated. Later, Laura accompanies Elliot to the boatyard, where they head straight to Greg's boat to check if anyone has tried to break in. As she enters the boat, she lifts up the cushions, only to discover a pair of purple panties hidden underneath. The realization hits her hard, and she's overcome with frustration and grief. Elliot arrives and notices something is wrong. Laura, still in shock, shows him the panties she found. She suspects they belong to Hannah, so she checks her profile on a dating site to confirm. When the panties match her suspicions, Laura is consumed with exasperation and sorrow. Elliot, seeing her distress, suggests they go to his own boat for a while. There, he makes her a cup of coffee and offers her some comforting words. He gently encourages her to move on, assuring her that new paths will open up. After their conversation, Elliot walks her outside and wraps a blanket around her shoulders. They exchange a brief, understanding smile before parting ways. As Laura walks away, Elliot returns to his boat, his mind heavy with emotion. Sitting alone, he looks at old photos of his mother, tears welling up as memories flood his thoughts. The scene shifts to Laura, who asks Greg about his whereabouts the previous night. Greg explains that he was at work and had called Hannah to take notes for him. Laura's suspicions start to solidify, and when Greg tries to get closer, she pushes him away, creating distance between them. The next morning, Elliot arrives at the house and begins setting up his tools and materials for the renovation project. Laura returns from a jog and sees Jamie chatting with Elliot. It's clear that Elliot is great with kids, a quality that Laura finds admirable and endearing. Laura then sends Jamie downstairs to join Myra and Charlie while she heads to the bathroom for a shower. However, as she enters, Elliot unexpectedly follows her in. Without warning, he undresses and steps into the shower with her. In the confined space of the cabin, their breath quickens as the tension between them builds. Laura allows Elliot to take control, and they share a passionate, heated kiss, their chemistry undeniable. The moment intensifies as they give in to the magnetic pull between them. Later, we find Laura at the boatyard, where she observes couples embracing each other around the area. She heads toward their boat to speak with her husband, Greg. Greg greets her warmly, mentioning how teenagers these days tend to sneak onto various boats. Laura listens with growing astonishment as Greg talks about the purple underwear, a detail that piques her curiosity. Greg casually suggests it could have been some of the teenagers who also left the flap open. Laura, visibly disturbed and embarrassed, stands frozen in shock as Greg wraps his arms around her and professes his love for her. Meanwhile, Elliot is seen playing with Jamie in the yard. Laura pulls up with Myra in the car, and as she steps out, Elliot is speaking with Jamie, offering him candy. After a brief moment, Laura returns and directs Jamie to join Charlie while she pulls Elliot aside to the back shed. There, she attempts to explain that their affair needs to end. However, Elliot refuses to listen. Instead, he begins seducing her. Laura hesitates, protesting at first, and tries to justify her feelings for Greg. But in the end, the pull of desire is too strong, and she gives in to Elliot, allowing their passionate connection to continue. As night falls, Elliot sits alone in his boat, obsessively cutting out Greg's face from Laura's pictures. He replaces Greg's face with his own, continuing his unsettling task. The following morning, he arrives at the house with yellow roses in hand, wishing Laura a happy birthday while ominously claiming that he knows everything about her. Laura stares at him, confused and uneasy, as Elliot watches her with an unsettling gaze. Just then, Greg comes outside, heading to work. He's surprised to see the yellow roses, knowing they are Laura's favorite. Both men leave for their respective duties. Furious, Laura storms inside and confronts Elliot, scolding him for his actions. She admits that she was wrong to judge Greg and confesses that she can't continue this relationship with Elliot. In a firm tone, she demands that he leave the house and stop working there. As Laura rejects him, Elliot trembles with sadness, his heart breaking. The scene fades to black. Later, Laura returns home with Jamie, telling him that Elliot is gone for good. But unbeknownst to her, Elliot is still lurking in the yard, watching her every move. Later, as Laura gets ready in the bathroom, she prepares for a night out. She steps outside, where a surprise birthday party awaits, with Greg, Bill, and others gathered. Laura thanks everyone and kisses Greg, while Elliot watches from the shadows, filled with grief. Meanwhile, Han arrives and tells Laura how excited Greg was about planning the entire event. He had her work late just to ensure everything was perfect for the party. Laura smiles, taking it all in. Greg then introduces Elliot to Hannah, who immediately starts eyeing him with interest. Throughout the night, Elliot can't take his eyes off Laura as Greg keeps her close. Uncomfortable with the tension, Elliot excuses himself, but the ladies quickly follow. Hannah sits with him, attempting to make conversation, but he responds minimally, his attention constantly fixed on Laura. As the party winds down, Hannah approaches Elliot and asks if he'll take her with him. Meanwhile, Laura lies in bed next to Greg, wrestling with the urge to confess what happened with Elliot. Before she can speak, Greg reassures her, calling her amazing and lavishing her with compliments. They end up growing closer, lost in the moment. On the other side of the property, Elliot takes Hannah to the boat. She throws herself at him, but despite her advances, he remains distant. Their interaction grows more intense, but when they reach the bed, Hannah discovers that Elliot isn't even aroused. Frustrated, she stands to leave, but then notices Laura's pictures on the wall. Staring in shock, she calls Elliot a nutter, which sends him into a rage. In a fit of anger, he strangles Hannah from behind, unable to control his emotions any longer. The next morning, Laura is outside watering the yard when Greg approaches, expressing his admiration for her. He mentions that once the sailing trip is over, they'll finally have some time for themselves. As they share a kiss, Elliot watches from inside the house, consumed by jealousy. After Greg leaves, Laura heads to the shed and is shocked to find it transformed into an art studio. Canvases are scattered around, and everywhere she looks, she sees the words forever and ever, Laura plus Elliot, true love written on the walls. Horrified, she takes in the disturbing scene, but the shock deepens when she hears Jamie scream. Rushing inside, she finds him lying on the floor. As she checks on him, Jamie tells her that Elliot was there. Panicked, Laura runs outside and confronts Elliot. She demands that he leave them alone and stop his disturbing surprises. Elliot, however, becomes more obsessive and insists that she and Greg are finished. His obsession quickly escalates into aggression, and he forcibly grabs Laura, holding her against her will. In fear, Laura screams for help. Just as the struggle intensifies, Jamie arrives and sees what's happening. At the sight of Jamie, Elliot reluctantly releases Laura and storms off, leaving the house in a fit of rage. Later that evening, Laura sits down and begins searching the web, reading through reviews of Elliot's work. Among the list of comments, one stands out written by someone called Purple Wallflower. The comment is chilling, claiming that Elliot destroyed her life. Disturbed, Laura is unable to shake the feeling that something is terribly wrong. The following morning, Laura quickly packs and heads to Denton Island. She makes her way to a local shop and speaks with the owner, asking for information on Purple Wallflower. The shop owner hesitates for a moment before mentioning a woman named Willie Hamill. After obtaining Willie's address, Laura walks to her house and knocks on the door. At first, Willie seems reluctant to speak, but eventually she opens up. Willie reveals that Elliot ruined her life, destroying her marriage and taking away her family. She warns Laura that Elliot is dangerous, even calling him crazy. She also urges Laura to look into what he did to his own mother before quickly shutting the door in fear. Meanwhile, the camera pans across the docks where a young girl drops her necklace into the water. As she reaches for it, a horrifying discovery is made. A dead girl's head surfaces, causing panic and screams to erupt around the area. The news of Hannah's death quickly spreads across the television, and as Myra and Bill hear the shocking news, they attempt to call Greg. Before he can answer, Elliot appears behind him, and the scene fades to black. The loud noise jolts Laura awake from her sleep. Fearful for her safety and feeling a surge of anxiety, she grabs a baseball bat and cautiously makes her way downstairs, hearing more things shattering around the house. When she enters the living room, she finds a plate with cannoli, but underneath it, a window frame has been completely shattered. At the same time, Elliot is seen leaving the house, visibly distressed and tormented. Meanwhile, Greg awakens on the boat, bound to a pole. He struggles to free himself, managing to escape, but as he attempts to flee, Elliot intercepts him and delivers a forceful blow. Greg fights back, but Elliot overpowers him, knocking him to the ground. Later, Laura sits down with Myra, reflecting on her growing suspicions about Greg's sudden disappearance. She opens up to Myra, admitting that she had an affair with Elliot and that it happened twice. Myra's eyes widen in shock as Laura confesses that Elliot's behavior has become increasingly obsessive and threatening. Laura expresses her fear and uncertainty about what Elliot might do next. Myra, concerned for her safety, urges Laura to be cautious and take the situation seriously before it escalates further. Afterwards, Laura heads to the bakery and strikes up a conversation with the elderly woman behind the counter. She orders a cup of tea and a cupcake, but as she enjoys her treat, her eyes are drawn to a wall filled with framed pictures. The old woman begins sharing details about Elliot's past, how he used to come to the bakery with his mother when he was a child. The woman explains that Elliot's mother had a string of unfaithful husbands, which left Elliot with deep trust issues. But things took a darker turn when Elliot set fire to their house. Laura listens, horrified by the story, and quickly stands to leave. As she heads for the door, the old woman tells her that Elliot had been there that morning, saying he was going to marry a widowed woman and become a stepdad. Shocked and terrified by this revelation, Laura rushes home. She is immediately overcome with fear when she enters to find Elliot waiting for her instead of Greg. Stunned, Laura asks about Greg, but Elliot begins to terrorize her, acting like a madman. He brutally overpowers her, and when Jamie enters the room, Elliot forces him to leave. He drags Laura upstairs and ties her to the bed. Thinking quickly, Laura uses her wits to find a way to escape. She professes her love for Elliot, claiming she now realizes how much she loves him. With that, she convinces him to untie her, and they head downstairs for dinner. Downstairs, Jamie is tied to a chair, and despite Elliot's erratic behavior, Laura calmly tells Jamie to eat and play along. Just as Myra and Bill arrive outside, Laura tries to move toward the window, but Elliot catches her and orders both mother and son upstairs. In the bedroom, Elliot forces Jamie outside, leaving him alone with Laura for a private moment. He approaches her aggressively, and things take a horrifying turn as he attempts to assault her. As he pushes her onto the bed, Jamie suddenly bursts in through the door. In that moment, Elliot experiences a flashback to his own childhood, remembering his mother lying in bed. The memory overwhelms him, giving Laura the chance to strike him and make her escape. She runs downstairs and urges Jamie to flee for his life. But just as he gets away, Elliot reappears and tackles Laura to the ground. He violently throws her across the room, slamming her head with a hammer and knocking her unconscious. As night falls, Elliot drags Laura's limp body to a boat, wrapping her in a sack. But Laura regains consciousness, cuts open the bag, and escapes. She comes face to face with Elliot and stabs him in the stomach before running away. Following a trail of blood on the deck, she enters another boat and finds Greg unconscious on the floor. Desperate, she calls for help, but the phone line is abruptly cut off. Meanwhile, Elliot regains consciousness on the boat, but Laura strikes him once more. She quickly makes a run for it, with Elliot chasing after her. The chase leads them upstairs, where Elliot finally catches up to Laura and attempts to strangle her. In a desperate struggle, Laura manages to strike him back and, with all her strength, throws him out of the window. He crashes to the ground below, hitting his head on impact and dying instantly. In the film's final moments, we see Laura and her family happily enjoying their time together. As Laura checks the fridge, she's surprised to find a delicious cannoli inside. To her delight, she learns that Greg had brought it for her. The family sits together, savoring the sweet treat, with smiles all around. The film concludes on this heartwarming note, with everything seemingly returning to normal. That wraps up the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to subscribe for more content like this, and don't forget to hit the like button to support our channel.